Hello! Welcome to Lopez Power Lopez review of Terminator 2 Judgment Day. It's gonna be the 25th anniversary this year, and I decided to review it. And I think this movie deserves to be talked about. I talked about the first one. Let me go on to say that I really like the first one, but Terminator 2 I think is the better movie. Actually, kind of by a long shot too. It's one of the few times where the sequel, part 2, is actually a lot better than the original. The first movie, it's kind of the perfect example of a great action movie in my opinion, even more than Die Hard. Um, I think it resembles it's the perfect example of a 90s action movie. It's like the best 90s action movie. Not just one of the best 90s action movies, but one of the best action movies, if not the best, in my opinion anyway, action movies of all time. Um, the first Terminator was different. Felt actually more like a horror movie with a little bit of noir and kind of romance. It wasn't really that much of an action movie. It was kind of felt more like a horror noir movie. This one is a full blown action movie, Terminator 2, Judgment Day. Um, and it's great action too. It's just great stunts. Perfect example of CG blend with practical effects on the T-1000. Um, just like sometimes it's done with puppets with the T-1000. Sometimes it's done with CGI. It just blends together so flawlessly. And thing about CGI today, and then Force Awakens was another example of a good blend of CGI and practical. But this one, and also Jurassic Park, especially early 90s uh, CG done by James Cameron and Spielberg. The thing about it, especially with Terminator 2, the reason why the CG is so memorable and so good is it's not overtiring. Movies abuse it so much that it becomes kind of boring after a while. But when they blend it with practical use, when it's on, it's just amazing. It's believable. It just looks more real and more in a more tactile, limited use, mixed with tactile world with a very limited use. And like, for example, I'm gonna remember the special effects on the T-1000 way before, and I love it, way before like Optimus Prime in the Michael Bay Transformers movies. Um, what makes Terminator 2 so good is it's a great emotional story. It really is. It got a good heart to it. It's 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 the only movie where in the previous movie, which kind of was just kind of a soulless killing machine. In the next movie, he's a good guy with a story arc and done right. That's so weird and rare and awesome at the same time. Um, the T-800, man, is just got a good story arc. Is Schwarzenegger actually is not. The thing is, Schwarzenegger is not a top-notch actor. He's not an Academy Award-winning actor. But I'd say with the second Terminator, he does portray that character very well. He portrays the emotions that is received throughout the movie, and again, in its arc, very well, very believable. Everyone else is good. Robert Patrick as the T-1000, very intimidating. He's a shorter, skinnier guy than Arnold, and it's not just that because he's a more advanced Terminator. Just by his acting, he is more intimidating than Arnold Schwarzenegger. Just that look, and he's not only one of the most intimidating Terminator to date. He's one of the most intimidating villains in movie history, I think. I just can't praise his performance enough. Because he kind of just blends in with human world. You couldn't spot this guy out of a crowd. But when he's in his full focus killing gear, like it's very intimidating. Like he has this very serious pointed eye face. That's great performance on Robert Patrick, who appears. This guy's like, I don't know what, 165, and he's more intimidating than someone who's like over 200 pounds. But then again, the T800 has more of an arc. That's why he, especially in this movie, but even in the first one, like, I'd be more intimidated by Robert Patrick. The thing is that the one thing I like about this movie, and I liked it in the first movie, but I think it's better here. And don't get me wrong, like, I'm not saying it's a bad performance, but, Michael Biehn's performance in the first Terminator, I was watching it kind of again, and I know in the first movie I thought it was because he was so over the top and he's memorable, and that's true. But the over the topness of Michael Biehn's acting you didn't take seriously at times. But the acting in this movie I think is a lot better than the acting in the first movie. Like, James Cameron really upped his game in directing these actors. It's just great performances, especially from John Connor. I think, again, Robert Patrick, like I mentioned, but John Connor his character's name is John Connor. What's his name? Edward Furlong is John. Great child actor. I know he was in other movies, but I wish I would have seen him more in other movies, because he's a great child actor. I think because the thing is, the problem with a lot of child actors, and this kind of shows in like movies like The Phantom Menace, and like even like Wes Craven's New Nightmare, even though it kind of worked in that movie, the child actors, the reason why they're considered bad is they kind of play it overly cutesy and innocent. Like, talking the high voice and has, the thing about Edward Furlong, I think because he has that street punk attitude, it's nowhere near as bad as some of those other child performance actors, because he has such a kind of that street punk attitude that it's not annoying. And when he is innocent, like there's one scene where he's like, where he's talking about his dad and trying to explain to the Terminator why humans cry. His performance, he is acting more innocent, but it feels much more natural because it's not overly done like most child actors are directed. And I think it's direction. Kids, they don't know how to act. Like I said in my Famous review, don't really mess with Jake Lloyd's acting because he was just a kid. But the thing is, it's not the kid's fault, it's the director's. Like, for example, George Lucas, he can't really help adults, let alone children. And James Cameron, I think, is a better actor-director. So he knew how to direct Edward Furlong in a way that was believable, and likable, and not too overly cutesy, because it's just not really believable and kind of gets annoying after a while when it's done that way. But when he doesn't act cutesy, but there are times when he acts innocent. And because it doesn't have that cutesy part of it, it feels more natural. It feels more genuine rather than annoying. So great kudos to Edward Furlong, and kudos to James Cameron's directing and for that actor. Again, Linda Hamilton, even though she's over the top in this movie, you can kind of understand why, because you really feel what she has gone through. Like, you see in her face, she's very, like, you could tell she portrays Sarah Connor in this movie, like, very, like, she's seen a lot, very very focused on the future, more tough. She's one. It's kind of weird though, because if you watch Terminator 1 and Terminator 2, Linda Hamilton, Sarah Connor is like two different characters. They're almost completely different characters. But I think the one in Terminator 2 is portrayed much more interesting because the way she's portrayed as, kind of a tough, seen a lot, you know, will not break down person, will not, stop and doing what is right. So again, really, really, just the way it's written, I think her character's written, is portrayed as very well. Now, let's talk about, again, the action is really good. Um, Schwarzenegger does, like, there's this one scene where he gets out of the truck and climbs on this rig that the T-1000 is driving. And he does it all, that's all him. And it's so good. It's kind of, and it's so cool at the same time. It's just so, it makes the action, when you know that, more believable and enthralling. So yeah, and also, again, because, okay, the action in this movie, compared to something like, I don't know, I know I keep picking on the Transformers movies, but they're just the prime example of CGI overload. But the action in this movie, again, Mad Max Fury Road kind of had this too. Although it's not as over the top as Mad Max Fury Road, the action is mostly practical. Because, especially with car chases and things smashing into each other and real explosions that look real, tangible, these action scenes, like if you were there, you would get hurt type of thing, and you believe it, because it's not made in some dude's computer screen. It's actual real trucks, real explosions, real things getting smashed. It's much more entertaining and enthralling than something like that. It's probably a great example of that. I think, again, 90s action movies, again, kind of start with Die Hard, but I think it really, really peaked with Terminator. I mean, not peaked, set a bar with Terminator 2 for 90s action movies. And the 90s were a great era for action movies, like Con Air, even though that movie is very over the top, the action in that movie is so great. Because it's all real and tangible. Same thing, even if when it's like models, and the same thing in this movie when they use like models, because it looks real and tangible, it's just so much more interesting to watch. In Mad Max Fury Road, understand this. And even Michael Bay at one point with The Rock. The Rock is, little quick review on that. The Rock is the only good Michael Bay movie. Because the story, yeah, it's cheesy, but it's really cool at the same time because it has Sean Connery and Nicolas Cage. But it's not, the car chase in that movie is so good because it's real and tangible, and like The Rock, and also in real explosion, and like real looking gunfire. It's not all CGI. Same thing here with Terminator 2. Terminator 2 kind of started that, I think. And man, it's just so much more interesting to watch than, and I think especially of last 2015 to 2016, I don't know, I haven't seen much movies, but the movies we've seen from 2016, notice how a lot of people are going back to the old ways, like with Mad Max and not Terminator Genesis. What's that movie? Star Wars: The Force Awakens. Again, my favorite movie of last year. Star Wars: The Force Awakens and like Mad Max. Those movies are the two of the best movies of this year because it uses more practicality to it, to its story. It's not all overblown CGI. Especially Mad Max Fury Road really understood this with its car chases. Most of it is real except for one scene. And especially Terminator 2 is just such a great example of it. So that's why this action in that movie is great. Another great thing about Terminator 2, and it's so much better than the other movies, the first one, third one, fourth one, fifth one, I don't know how many there are. I think there's five. Yeah, there's five. Terminator 2 has the best score by far out of all of them. Brad Fiedel, he composed at least the first two movies. I'm not sure if he did the other movies. But Brad Fiedel, he did 1 and 2. And with the first one, he kind of had, like a techno kind of metal feel to it. This, version to the song has a very big symphonic, orchestra feel to it. It's just, it gets you so pumped up, to hear this version of it. It's like, do do do, do do do. And even the 3, 4, and 5, the sound, that version of that song, the Terminator theme, isn't as awesome in those movies as it is in the second one for some weird reason, because it has that big orchestrated feel to it, but it has that also big heavy metal feel to it. Not like heavy metal like rock, but Terminator's feeling to it. So I just love the score because it just feels so much bigger and more epically, emotionally driven. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. It's probably one of the, if not the best sequel of all time. It's just so good. I definitely recommend it. It's, again, is there anything else I want to talk about? Oh yeah, the kind of the hitting morality in this movie is just so good. Of It's kind of a loop in this movie. I know that the T-1000 is the main antagonist of the movie, but there's a point, especially towards the end, where Sarah Connor is gonna try to terminate Miles Dyson because he's the one that created the thing that creates Judgment Day, and because he has access to the former computer chip CPU of the previous Terminator from the other movie in the arm. And so she thinks that if she whacks him off, destroys him, there will be no more Judgment Day. But it's kind of interesting because he's just an innocent guy, he doesn't know what he's creating. But she in a way becomes a Terminator, even more so than Schwarzenegger's Terminator. It's kind of an interesting reverse. And when you can see in her eyes that she kind of realized that now she's become a Terminator. That's when she kind of falls down, and it doesn't really flat out say it, but it's implied. And it's kind of so deep, and at the end, the Terminator, the real one, T-800, learns the value of human life. The bad guy from the previous movie in this one, good Terminator, learns the value of human life. That's just so cool. And I just love that last image of after he says, "I know why you cry." And John Connor hugs the Terminator because the Terminator kind of becomes the father he always wanted. And it's such a great image of them hugging. Also, it's got great comedy in it because the Terminator is trying to learn to be more human. He's kind of like Data from Next Generation. He's trying to learn to be more human. So John Connor kind of teaches him to get more human emotions, like to smile, how to talk street, how to have a personality. And at the end, the Terminator has like a person. He's like cracking jokes, and he's like, "I need a vacation," and in the beginning he's kind of like this cold, heartless thing, to at the end with a person with cracking jokes and being a person, and it just makes the character really likable. And I think Terminator 2, really helps even the first one. I don't think the first Terminator would have been as iconic of a movie without the second one. The second one is an iconic movie too, but I think if it wasn't for the greatness and the success of the second one, even the first one probably would have been forgotten or seen as just, like an 80s, noir, horror-esque film. Without the second one, I don't think it would be as known as a classic. And, James Cameron really caught lightning with a ball, especially with the second one. Really good movie. Again, example of a sequel being much better than the first one. And a lot of people, like on Rotten Tomatoes, the first one has a higher. The first the first Terminator is one of the only movies on Rotten Tomatoes. One of them. There's a couple other, like a good 10 I think, where it's got like a perfect score. It's got a perfect 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. The first one. Was the second one I think has like a 93 or 94. But I think most people still agree that. I'm not sure about the critical consensus, but like that the second one was a lot better than the first one, because the first one kind of had more style, had style to it, but this one I think has more personality, more interesting characters, better action. And I don't hate the first one. I love the first one, but when I say the first one's a really good movie, the second one's a great movie. It's a classic. I don't know. I mean, even though I like the visual style of the first movie better than I do the second movie, like the cinematography, but I think I can't say that the first one's a classic. Like, I can say that Terminator 2 is a classic. I think it's a much more memorable movie too, just because of how cool the characters get. Hasta la vista, baby, I'll be back. And, again, I'll be back was in the first movie, but I think it's more recognized in the second movie. And then the Terminator, he gets the human personality. He's like, trust me, and he becomes a likable character. Everyone in this movie is just so good. Is there anything I don't like about it? Well, I would say the dream sequence between, even though again I love the models, the dream sequence with Sarah Connor where they get nuked, I thought was just kind of pointless scene. But other than that, I think the movie's a flawless movie. Flawless action movie. Great example. See, the thing about the Terminator movies, even the bad ones, Terminator Genesis, I don't hate. I think that's the only one after Terminator 2 that's really good. And it's not like a classic, but I think it's not bad. It's actually got its moments. But even with the 3 and 4, the thing about, even the fourth one, the thing about the Terminator movies is each one kind of represents the time it was made. Like, the first one is a great example of an 80s movie. It really is. It represents that time period really well. It's similar to the Rocky movies. The second one really represents the 90s. It's just an example. It's kind of the first one that started, I think, in my opinion. I mean, I know Die Hard started, but it really kicked off with Terminator 2, the 90s style action movie. And it's just the perfect example of a 90s action movie. Even the third one is like a perfect example of the type of movies they were doing in the early 2000s. And the fourth one is like the type of like weird movies they were doing in the late 2000s with, even like with the fourth Rambo movie where like it started in the Transformers movie. They all started looking like video games. Movies were trying to look more like video games than actual movies, and Terminator Salvation kind of did that. And even Terminator Genesis represents the kind of type of movies, action movies they do now, like in 2015. And I think that each movie really represents the time period of when it was made. But again, Terminator 2, my favorite of the Terminator franchise by far. It's got great action, got great characters, got great performances. It's got great story. It's got great character development. It's got great in-depth, context with, the machine becoming man and the man kind of becoming machine. And it's so cool. It's such a great movie. I give it a 4 out of 4 stars, a 10 out of 10. An A+. It's just got great, even, like the beginning, like, the post-apocalyptic version is just so, Okay, another thing about Terminator 2, even though I said it's a perfect example of a 90s movie, it's very timeless. Timeless movie. It could have been made any time. There's like, with the exception made the video games, it's a very, the video games that are portrayed in the movie when John Connor's in the arcade. Other than that, it's a very timeless movie. I can't really say that about the first one. The first one's very 80s. Again, I love the very 80s aspect of the first one, but I can't say that one's timeless because of that reason. Second one is such a timeless movie. It's a timeless action movie, especially from the opening. With the post-apocalyptic version of 2029 in that movie. Again, it's not doesn't have the stop motion of the first movie, but it's just that motion control and the models and the set. Again, no CGI in that scene, and that scene is just a timeless scene of that post-apocalyptic world. Such a timeless scene, not dated at all. Even in the later part when they're in the present world of the 90s, it's just so brilliant. Um, the performance of Dr. Silberman, I forgot to say, is great. He kind of plays that laid back psychiatrist that's kind of over controlling, but he plays it so well. I can't remember the actor who played Dr. Silberman. Everyone else in that mental hospital was pretty good too. That it's kind of a cool scene. That when she's like doing pull-ups and the like how's the knee and all the sequences in the mental hospital are great scene too. The opening after the post-apocalyptic world is just with where he's in the bar and gets the clothes boots and motorcycle. It's just all it's just got so many memorable stuff. Great movie. Again, 4 out of 4 stars, 10 out of 10. A+. If you love action movies, you'll love this movie. If you love the 90s style of action movies, you'll love this movie. If you love timeless sci-fi, you'll love this movie. So that's my review of Terminator 2 Judgment Day. This year, 2016, it's going to be re-released. It's the 25th anniversary this year of Terminator 2, and it's just so good. I'm going to see it re-released. I just love the 90s action movie of Terminator 2. It's just such a great movie. I keep repeating myself. There's nothing more to say but to go watch it. And if you haven't seen it, go see it. It's just a timeless action movie. I think you'll love it. I definitely prefer seeing. If you only want to see one of the Terminator movies, definitely see Terminator 2. Even though I really like the first one, it's I think a lot better than the first one. It's miles better than 3, 4, and 5. It's just such a good movie. So one of my favorite movies of all time. I think it might be my top 5 or 6. So great example of a great sequel. And see you next review. Take care. God bless. Lopez Power Lopez signing out.